Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the possibly soon-to-be renamed ConDev podcast. Today, I'm joined by Pokemon Go player Mike Miller and Somber Studios head developer John Grady, and we're going to talk about Pokemon Go. I think it's no secret to anybody that when Pokemon Go launched, it was kind of a worldwide phenomenon. As Grady was saying earlier before the show, it kind of changed the world, like how a significant number of the population acted for quite a while after that. But from a game design perspective, we feel like, at least I feel like, it's made a few missteps that kind of failed to capitalize on that, hugely successful launch. So, I guess to start off, how is Pokemon Go now?
It's still going. The major change is that rather than when you're out there playing in a park or something like that, you can run into a bunch of other people that are playing. More people look at you like, you're still playing that? Because it's over a year old now, and in the first couple months, everybody was playing it, and the game itself, it's gone through several major overhauls. They just redid the gym system, I think in June, and introduced raid battles shortly after that. But the game, it's still basically the same, but they've changed some core mechanics of it, and still up for debate whether it's for the better or for the worse.
Gotcha. Because I know that I played for quite a while, at least a few months, and then I just got the sense that I wasn't really playing towards anything. Like, it felt like there should have been more follow through, and I honestly feel like it wasn't a hard follow through to organize because you have, this material, all the other Pokemon games to draw from, and there's battle systems and gym systems and all this sort of stuff that's kind of already established, and it felt like they should have took some of that, what makes Pokemon great, and put it at the end of, as the goal of Pokemon Go, because that was my thing. Is I loved collecting the Pokemon. I loved going and tracking them down, finding them. It was a very different experience from your typical gaming, yeah. Especially and even different from mobile gaming. You're more actively involved, and it's not just wasting a few minutes. But I just felt like I wasn't really working towards anything. So what exactly did they do? How did they change? Because when I played, the gym system, it didn't really... I don't feel like it did anything. You'd take a gym, you'd fill it with your team's Pokemon, and then 5 minutes later, it's just well, it's probably gone. Right. Or it's just nobody bothers. It's either there forever or it was... So how did they change that?
Yeah, and I will say too that I'm not as hardcore of a player that a lot of people are. Mm-hmm. It took a long time to get into the gyms initially. Just because of the system, the first system that they had for the first year of it, almost a year of its existence, when you took over a gym, you had a couple free spots, and then you had to battle your own Pokemon to open up additional spots for more players. Mm-hmm. Or they would, if somebody wanted to get into the gym, they'd battle the Pokemon that you left from your same team and open up a spot for themselves. Now, when you take over a gym, there's just 6 open spots, period. And 6 people can get in there, no more than 6 people, but all spots are open at once. And but when you first take it over, it is very likely that you're just going to get kicked out right away. But
gotcha.
Yeah, so it is a big change, and kind of what you were talking about before, the end game. I think that is really a thing that it's struggled with, is the end game. Mm-hmm. Because gyms were kind of frustrating before, and now it was a little bit difficult to get coins. You could get a maximum of 100 coins per day, but you had to be in 10 different gyms. Mm-hmm. And you hit a button to collect the coins, and that was it. So if you collected your coins when you had 60 or 6 gyms, and then you ended up taking over 4 more, you still had 60, and you had to wait until the next day to collect. Gotcha. Now, you get a maximum of 50 per day, but it's more time-based. So if your Pokemon is in the gym you get 1 coin for every 10 minutes, I think, that you're in the gym. So if you're in a gym for 8 hours, you max out your 50 coins. Whether you have and you do have to get knocked out of the gym in order to collect those 50 coins. So, for instance, for me the other day, I had 3 Pokemon in gym for the full 24 hours. The first one was knocked out just after midnight, so I got my 50 coins for that day and didn't get anything for the day before.
Gotcha.
So, I think it's better for casual players because, the most that I'd ever get before in the old gym system was 10, 20, maybe 50 coins. Mm-hmm. But now I'm almost guaranteed 50 coins a day just by putting something in a gym and hoping that I get knocked out.
Gotcha. Okay. So to me, it sounds like they're definitely making improvements, and it sounds like it's still quite a work in process. So Grady, do you think, like, I get the sense that, this sort of retuning almost should have happened like right after the game came out, because I noticed like pretty fast, like, once everybody kind of knew how everything worked in the beginning and started to really like kind of hone in on like, okay, this is how I'm going to play this game. There were so many complaints about the old system, and like they were going on for a long time.
Yeah.
So do you think it was like, Grady, do you think it was like too little I mean, obviously it's not too little too late. It's a hugely successful game, but as far as that, do you think it was almost too little too late? Like, you think they should have been way more on the ball about that? Or I guess that's a really loaded question, but
I think there's a few problems. Mm-hmm. Firstly, you kind of got 2 audiences. You've got like the core Pokemon game audience, and then you've got more casual. Well, yeah, I played Pokemon when I was little. I'd like to try this thing. I play phone games. Mm-hmm. The problem is people who play phone games, the more casual people, don't know these changes have been made. And for the people who are more intense into it, they know the changes, and it still doesn't address their core problems. I know for me, what really killed me was the combat system in general, and
what combat system
items that existed, and exactly the tapping gym attack system and all that. Like, I didn't mind the capture system that didn't involve fights,
right?
But the fights were in there in the gym, and then for me, a turn-based RPG is about the best kind of RPG you can have on a phone. It allows you to be slow with your controls because you're on a tiny screen and all that, and you can put stuff in a little text menu, and it's the kind of thing that would have worked. And rather than take that more intense system and adapt it and use it, they just kind of came up with this weird tap to attack, like swipe to dodge type thing. And on top of that, my understanding is they kind of messed up some of the typing bonuses and like damage bonuses in such a way where they ended up, at least at launch, with like 6 or 7 Pokemon that were viable, and everything else was just, I mean, you walk around town and every gym would have a Snorlax or a Vaporeon on top of it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And that was one of the big improvements on the gym update, was that you can't have duplicate Pokemon in the gym now. Oh. So you can't just have a stack of Blissey or Snorlax. Everything has to be different, and I think that's great because you see one of every single Pokemon in the gym if you go far enough. But
you might know more about this than I do, but is my understanding correct that basically what they did is they messed up the multipliers on type weaknesses in such a way that normal types just are inherently too resilient or something like that?
Pretty much. I mean, what you were saying about like 2 main cores, there's a couple different gray areas of that too, where like I never played any Pokemon games before Pokemon Go, and I really like Pokemon Go. My girlfriend played a dozen Pokemon games as a kid, and she likes Pokemon Go, but isn't as into it as I am. So you have like kind of a little subsets of those as well. But that being said, like because I wanted to mention that because since I never played Pokemon games as a kid, the multipliers and the type effectiveness is something that I learned from this game. And but you are right that normal type is weak to fighting, and that's about it. So you pretty much have to have a strong fighting type to take out this stack, even with the gym rework, this stack of Snorlax, Blissey, and Chansey. Until recently, it wasn't realistic in certain areas to get really good fighting types. So you had to fight it with whatever you had, and it was really difficult if there were multiples of them in the gym.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I think another thing too is the need to constantly play. Like, I got to the point, I really wasn't that interested at all when it came out, and my wife was super interested. So I was like, okay, well, I'm going to take my wife's phone and I'm going to go catch her any because she loves evolutions like you wouldn't believe. And so I played it a little bit, and then I kind of got my own account and played for a little bit. I was like, well, this isn't as bad. It's more fun than I thought it would be at first before I kind of figured everything out. The new factor.
Yeah.
But I quickly got to the point where I'm like, I don't want to sit in the car with Pokemon Go open while we're driving to Arby's to get fast food, looking for Pokemon I don't have to grab.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to put myself in danger while I'm walking the dog because I'm trying to grab Pokemon. What I need is my phone to do nothing when there's a Pidgey around, and when there's something I haven't seen before or haven't captured, my phone pings an alert. Hey, you're within 1,000 meters of something you might actually care about. And then you can take it out and track them down. And it could be at such a distance where it's not like, oh, I'm on top of it, get it. It might be like, hey, I need to go 2 blocks over.
Yeah.
And I'm sure they didn't do that for battery reasons because they'd have to be running the GPS constantly. And I'm sure it would just murder your phone. But I feel like that's the kind of thing that would really be necessary to give it more mass appeal.
Yeah. Well, and it wouldn't murder your phone any more than if you had it on as you went up to Arby's the entire way.
Yeah.
Well, that's true. Absolutely.
And I think that's another kind of and I'm sure we'll get into it, like the kind of broken promises and stuff like that. But in the commercials leading up to Pokemon Go being released, they showed people hiking out in nature and catching Pokemon out in fields and stuff like
There's
that.
no Pokemon out there.
Go to a field and you'll see how many Pokemon are there. Ask any rural player what's out there.
Yeah.
Yeah, my wife works in a nearby town, and Sykeston is a small rural place, but where she works is smaller and more rural. And we literally drive through cornfields to go where she works. And you're not taking your phone out of the cornfield.
Yeah, I've heard constant horror stories. Like I am not as diehard of a player as some Pokemon Go players, but I do keep up with the community on the communities on Reddit, and it's a constant gripe from the rural players is just how dire it is out there. Like with Pokestops, gyms, and Pokemon themselves.
Yeah, like I've heard a lot of people saying like, I want to play this game, like I actually can't without moving.
Yeah, I mean, I thank like the Pokemon gods that I live in. I lived in Springfield, Missouri when it first came out, and moved to St. Louis, and I think they are some of the best places to catch. Period. It was like you'll have people in the desert. In Arizona that can't catch water types at all. They've seen 4 Magikarp when it takes 100 to evolve a Gyarados. And likewise, people on the coast, they get constant water types and cloisters and stuff like that, and they can't find any fire types or anything like that. Here in the middle of the country, we get everything, and it's fantastic. But
tell me about, have they made any improvements to the tracking system? Because I know before, I think when I stopped playing, if I remember correctly, it was
footsteps.
This thing's close by, and you could, there were ways you could kind of figure it out, but it was pretty broken.
It was very broken.
Have they changed that?
I remember trying to track down my first Jigglypuff. We were eating at a restaurant and I left to go catch it, and it constantly said 2 or 1 footsteps away, and I went in a giant circle, crisscrossed the circle, went everywhere inside of it, and it was nowhere gone. It had probably despawned 20 minutes prior, but it still said it was 1 footstep away.
Right.
It was a great idea, terribly executed. and they eventually just took it away. Period.
So they just completely scrapped it?
They took it away.
They didn't replace it with anything?
Maybe 6 months later they replaced it with something, which they were beta testing in San Francisco, I remember seeing. And it was, what would happen was it would show you the Pokemon nearby, and you could click on it or tap on it, and it would show you which Pokestop nearby it was, or which Pokestop.
Yeah, I remember hearing that. Yeah,
and that is the current iteration of the in-game tracker. So they replaced it with that. It doesn't work for Pokemon that aren't near stops, which is a problem. And it'll show you, Pidgeys and rats that are near Pokestops and completely miss the Dragonite that's maybe next to you.
Oh, God.
So that's still broken, but they never brought the footstep thing back. It was a great idea if it worked, but
I feel like all of these things, like I said it before, but like all of these things I feel like should have been done in the first, or at least started in like the first 2 months of the game's release.
Absolutely.
Because I mean, like all of those issues were surfacing at that time. The raid system. How does that work? Because I honestly don't know. Like I've seen bits and pieces of it, but how does the raiding actually work?
So the raids, and it kind of went hand in hand with the gym rework. But what'll happen is an egg will show up on top of a gym with a timer, counting down from an hour, and after an hour it hatches. And before the hour, you can actually see what level it is: 1, 2, 3, 4. Previously, it was just ended at 4. Then they introduced legendaries, which are 5. But you can see what level the raid was and have some sort of idea what might hatch, because there's a couple things from each level. Once it hatches, initially there was an hour that you had to fight it. Currently, it's 45 minutes to fight it. It was trying to introduce reintroduce the social aspect into Pokemon Go that they had lost after the first couple months. But the idea was to get several people together and fight this raid boss. And, most people don't roll around with a posse of Pokemon trainers to fight Snorlaxes and stuff like that. So that essentially meant, at least for me, I would fight level 1 and 2 things to just do my raid for the day. That's the other thing. You needed a raid pass. So you got one free raid pass a day, and if you wanted more, and you can only hold one free pass at a time. So if you didn't use your daily raid pass, you lost it. I tried to do one a day, so I could just keep playing it, keep beating bosses and stuff like that. But then if you wanted to do more than that, you could buy premium raid passes for 100 in-game coins. Yeah, 100 in-game coins. And then you could fight as many as you wanted. So, there were people that just went around and did raid pass. They were the ones that spent a lot of money on the game.
Yeah.
So like I would fight players like me that devolved into just going around and fighting a level 1 or 2 boss on a given day. It did introduce more of a challenge to try to take down level 3 bosses by yourself, which was possible, or is possible, I should say. Level 4 bosses, and especially 5, the legendaries, takes a lot of people potentially to take down. But that is when they released, or when they introduced legendaries after more than a year of waiting.
Yeah.
Essentially my goal, and I think that's the reason that there isn't really an end game to this, is because everybody plays for different reasons.
Right.
And I just want to complete my Pokédex. And from day one, these legendaries looked awesome, and I wanted them. And that's how they introduced them, was through raid battles. So, in addition to lower level things like Machamps and Snorlaxes, and really low level things like the starters, the second evolution of the starters. Mm-hmm. Then you had Articuno and Zapdos and Moltres and things like that. They released them a couple weeks at a time. So, and I think that was one of the major sticking points too, because the legendaries are supposed to be legendary. I think in the original games there was only one of them at a time. And then because of people purchasing at like so many premium raid passes, you had armies of 30 or 60 or 100 different legendary birds and stuff like that, and it seemed to make the legendaries a little bit less legendary.
Gotcha. But I did notice that, like, of the changes they've made, the raid thing was the thing I think I noticed the most. Like, I didn't exactly know how it worked, but it is something that, like, caught my eye as a non-player that kind of intrigued me. Like, I didn't go back and play, but if there was one thing that would have made me do it, that was probably the thing. So do you think that gave it a good bump?
I think it
like,
definitely
in the right
did.
direction of getting people back?
I think it definitely did, because I mean, there were day one players that you could catch everything in the game except for a few regional Pokemon that were only in like Asia, Europe, and Australia, and then the legendaries. And certain people just wanted to catch everything, so the legendaries included. And so once you heard that Moltres and Articuno and stuff like that is going to be back in the game, or being introduced to the game, you might want to pick it up and see if you can catch your favorite bird that from the games that you played as a kid. But yeah, it is definitely one of those things that's as a casual player, I think they did a good job of. Like it's very noticeable because you'll just be driving along or opening up the game and see what is this egg thing, or why does this gym have a timer above it? So you'd investigate, figure it out, and hopefully go catch an Articuno or something like that.
Yeah. Overall, like throughout the whole process, since you've kind of seen the whole evolution of all of this, how would you describe Niantic's, like, how they're handling the game, how they're managing it, like as far as like community engagement, like features and all of that? Like, how overall have they handled the game?
It depends on the feature.
Yeah.
Certain things they have listened to people, like some of the Pokemon that are very powerful in the original games were not that powerful, and that was one of the first major changes that they made. That was still in 2016. Was a shuffle of maximum CP or combat power. So there's one, for instance, Rhydon is a pretty strong Pokemon, and he had a very low CP, maximum CP, and they just reshuffled a bunch of things and made things that should have been more powerful, things that were maybe a little bit overpowered, a little bit less so. And that was the first major change that they ever, I think, that I remember them making to the game. And I don't know if that was directly from the community, but it's definitely people saying, why is my favorite Pokemon Alakazam, for instance? That's a lot of people's one of their favorite Pokemon. Unusable when the game first came out. But they reshuffled the CPs, and he was much more powerful and actually could be used. And I think that
was that more of like a one-time thing, or have they done it more
a couple
since
times?
then?
A couple times.
Gotcha.
There was one major one where it seemed like half the Pokemon went up or down in some way, and I think the next time that they did that, it was more ones that they missed. So for a little while, Lapras was one of the more powerful Pokemon, and they nerfed Lapras pretty hard. Which angered a lot of people, but I think that they meant to initially, and then they just missed it and corrected it later.
Gotcha. Because like that's kind of a problem that people have with Hearthstone, and it's getting better, but is Blizzard's kind of slowness to fix like game balance in a game like Hearthstone, I think even more important, because the main feature is the battle system. Not necessarily the case with Pokemon Go, but like there'll be cards that are like pretty much breaking the game or making this one deck like way too powerful. I'm looking at you, Ultimate Infestation. You need to change. And they just take way too long. Like, people feel like it's too little too late when they finally fix it.
Yeah.
And sometimes they don't fix it in the right way. And a lot of the times the problem is they make a card go from super overpowered to completely unusable.
Yeah.
Like, and so you're saying that's not really the case with Pokemon Go, though? Like, they did a pretty good balancing?
I think they did, but again, I never played it as a kid, and Lapras is a lot of people's very favorite Pokemon.
Oh, yeah.
For understandable reasons. It's amazing. But it went from being just... and that was when you could stack a gym with the same Pokemon. So, a gym with 10 Dragonites in it, which are weak to ice, you have this badass Lapras that can just roll through the entire thing. and after the rebalance, it couldn't do that exactly. Like, it still could because typing, which is Pokemon's what really I think sets it apart from a lot of other similar games. But you still could do it, but Lapras was pretty nerfed and stuff like that. But it was. I think that was good and bad at the same time, because you could see your favorite Pokemon get a lot stronger or a lot weaker. So I don't know. I think that was one of the first ones. The gym rework was another one where they had been working on that supposedly from day one, and the community is very mixed on it. So that there were some people, you could have 30 Pokemon in gyms and collect your 100 coins a day, because there's a maximum of 100, but you could leave them in for months if you were in the right gym. And it was an automatic 100 coins every single day. Now you actually have to work for it. And like for people like me, who I never got 100 coins a day, I don't maybe once or twice in a year. This 50 coin, I'm almost guaranteed 50 coins a day. It's much more usable for us. But hardcore players who could collect coins by doing nothing were kind of pissed. Yeah, and
I can see why. So like that kind of sounds like it hoses rural players even more, though.
Oh,
like, like you thought you couldn't do anything. Now look at this other stuff you can't do now.
I live right between 3 gyms, and there's one I can put something in that gym before I go to bed. If you're in the gym for 8 hours, you get your maximum coins for the day, and that's it. I don't really try for more than that, because why would you? But for a rural player, if there was only one gym in a 10-mile vicinity,
which is the case a lot of the time,
every player in that vicinity is going to be aiming for it, and it's almost worse if you're on the majority team, because you're not going to get you're going to get knocked out, or you're not going to get knocked out, and you're not going to collect your coins. It's bad if you're on the minority team, because the majority team is going to knock you out right away, and you're not going to get your coins.
Suddenly, like a meme I saw on the subreddit makes sense now, because I didn't know what they were talking about. But basically, like they were. There was like a Pokemon that was like begging for its life, like, please give me berries. And it's like, oh, I'm sorry, I don't have any more. Because they wanted it to get knocked out so they collect their coins. I get it now.
That is another great thing about the new one, is that before you saw the same 4 Pokemon in every gym. Now and you could leave them in there for weeks at a time if you could. Now the CP deteriorates over time. So if you could put a 3000 CP Dragonite in a gym, it actually deteriorates at a faster rate than a 10 CP Pidgey. So
gotcha.
It's it deteriorates over time, but still, if you're in the right gym, like I've seen people post photos of a Pokemon that's been in there for over 100 days, because nobody goes it, and they're not collecting any coins from it, because nobody's knocking it out of the gym. And the other downside of that is if that were to be knocked out of the gym on a day that the person had already collected 50 coins, it wouldn't even earn them anything.
Oh wow!
So
that sounds terrible.
It is pretty terrible.
Have they made any improvements or any changes at all to like the tap battle system?
No.
Because I know when I was playing, dodging was not great.
There's been a glitch. They call it the dodge glitch. There's tapping or quick attacks and charge attacks. The quick attacks charge the charge move, and taking damage from your other guy or from the opponent. But if your opponent hits you with a charge move and you dodge, it can still register as a hit temporarily. So it'll take the health away from your Pokemon, and then realize that you weren't actually hit and give it back. But if the health of your Pokemon is less than what that attack would have taken away, it takes it away and then switches to your next Pokemon and then tries to put it back and flips over, trying to bring your old Pokemon back, and then feints it, brings the other one back, and just you get caught in a loop.
That sounds
awful.
That sounds terrible.
Especially in raid battles. When they're time based, and you like the main challenge to soloing some of these tougher raid raid bosses is the time limit, and because you for sure have the Pokemon to do it if you're a high level player, but beating it in 180 seconds is a different story.
Yeah,
and by yourself. So if you're caught in this loop by a super powerful raid boss, you're screwed.
Yeah.
And so that's a bug that's been there since day one, and it's never been fixed.
That's insanity.
And like I was just affected by it on a Ho-Oh, one of the raid boss that was just introduced, and I got stuck in it and about twice in the same battle, and it was awful.
And that seems like I really want to. And another problem that when I played, I noticed that they had was like they're really bad at communicating with their community. Like Niantic doesn't seem to really talk to people at all. But I'm so interested in like their priorities, because it seems like there's these huge things that people want fixed. Like that seems pretty big to me.
It seems very basic.
Yeah, very basic, very big, and they're obviously concentrating their efforts on something else.
Yeah.
And I just, you think they're concentrating their efforts just on content, like developing the next generations and stuff like that, or?
Part of me hopes so, because I really want, I think that's the only way to keep players involved is, at first it was just the first generation. Mm-hmm. Generation 2 launched in February or January, one of the two, and it renewed the people's desire to play. Mm-hmm. So obviously that's is and should be a focus of them to keep people to adding new content. But at the same time, you're not going to keep anybody if your game is a glitchy mess.
Yeah,
like it was initially.
That's crazy.
That's why you saw parks full of people in the first week or two, the first month even, and then it just dropped off because the game would crash. The gym battles were impossible because it would crash. It was a glitchy, buggy mess, and that I think is their biggest failure, is that they had such a giant user base initially, and they couldn't do anything with it because it was just a glitchy mess.
That dodge fix sounds like a Band-Aid to a problem, but a Band-Aid that literally everyone's allergic to. Like you put it on your skin, it burns. Like, no, this is not good.
Right.
Like it kind of helps a little, but oh my god.
Yeah. And I think that's one of the things too. Like they've about kind of communication, because they showed all kinds of things. They showed raid battles in the initial trailer for the game, mm-hmm. and they were released over a year after it was released, or almost a year, I think, right about a year. Mm-hmm. So, they had promised all this stuff, and like player versus player battles, and that's another big trading, player versus player. None of those things are still in the game, and I think like that dodge glitch is a symptom of kind of why trading or not trading, but player versus player mm-hmm. couldn't work. Because
they gotta fix that first.
Yeah, and you're fighting an automated opponent, and it still can't get it right. Like, how are you going to be tapping against your buddy mm-hmm. and in real time, like fighting and dodging the attacks and stuff like that? You can't do it.
Yeah.
So like what Grady was saying earlier, Pokemon has always been turn based, and this combat is so different from what Pokemon should be, or is, or was. So like I think that's the only way that they could actually do player versus player, if they change the combat to be more turn based, because then you wouldn't have the dodge glitch at all.
Right. Yeah. So do you think, like, having not played the other games, like, do you think you would prefer improvements to the current battle system of like the actively or whatever, or would you prefer like a turn based system? Like, if they could get the current system to actually work, like you were saying, really difficult in real time, but if they could sort that out and get it to work, would you rather have that or a turn-based system?
It's hard to say, because part of the reason I never really got into Pokemon was, I've never really liked RPGs myself, like being able to select from a move list and hit your opponent with the move that you did, mm-hmm. Or that you select. So, like, part of me really likes this battle because I can just, hit the thing that I'm fighting in real time and, try to beat it that way rather than selecting, battle attacks. But at the same time,
more active.
Yeah. But at the same time, that's the turn-based thing is what Pokemon is. And Grady was also talking about field effects and stuff like that. Some moves that Pokemon have in the games affect your opponent for multiple turns, or have they cause confusion and can cause your opponent to hurt itself or something like that. And they might have a move that's caused or named the same thing in Pokemon Go, but it's not a field effect move or something like that. It's not the same. So part of me would like to see something more like what the original games were like, despite never having played it, just to see what it would be like, because that's what the game is supposed to be.
Right. Do you think if Pokemon Go didn't have the Pokemon license, the Pokemon branding, how do you think it would have done?
Oh, it would have failed.
See, that's kind of what I was about, a successful failure. Like, I feel like having that Pokemon brand made it like the number one thing, and is given it all the success that it currently has and still continues to have. And I'm with you. Like, I don't think if they didn't have the Pokemon brand, I don't think, because Niantic also made Ingress, correct?
Yep.
And I've heard a lot of Pokemon Go and Ingress players, people that play both, say that a lot of the problems in Pokemon Go, they're not really surprised by, because they made similar problems.
Yeah.
And they had similar problems in Ingress, like fixing stuff, like communicating with their players, like updating stuff when it needed to be updated, not waiting way too long. So I think they would have, since Ingress was a success, I think they might have actually had a decent amount, but man, I don't think it would have been the crazy phenomenon, at least at launch.
I know some players that went from Pokemon Go to playing Ingress, just because it had been more established. Niantic does still shove a lot of resources towards it, and it's basically Pokemon Go, just without catching the Pokemon themselves. It's still the gym battles almost, or you're at least controlling things like gyms, spinning Pokestops and things like that. It's Ingress is a success because it's a pretty neat game. Pokemon Go only was successful, I think, because of the license, and I wouldn't have played it. I played Ingress for a day, I think, but and that was because of a friend was going to get a badge for inviting me and having me spin or take over a couple.
I'm pretty sure I did the same thing with the same friend.
Yep,
RJ.
But so they took a massive dump on their fan base, and they could have done so much more with it. Because they had so many players in it initially, and Pokemon, like I said earlier, is one of the biggest IPs in the world, and you can see, people playing from all over the world. It's actually probably more, or could be more popular in Japan than it is here, and but it's absolutely crazy how fast the user base dropped off because of how glitchy it was. But they wouldn't have had that initial user base without the Pokemon name, right?
And one thing I'll give Pokemon Go credit to, because this is a plague on the video game industry. I did not have any problems with their microtransaction systems. It seemed pretty fair.
Yeah, well, I think the fact that you get a certain amount of coins for doing stuff in the game, but that was pretty fair too. That you could you potentially get 100 coins a day, which everything in the game is priced so that you can buy it with a day or two's worth of coins at that rate, and at the same time you could buy coins and just purchase the stuff outright. So it wasn't game breaking and stuff like that. What broke the game was spoofers and stuff like that could just cheat it and go around the world and catch whatever they wanted. Yeah. But inherently, if I spent $1,000 on incubators, egg incubators and stuff like that, and you didn't spend a dime, we were and you and I were just sitting right next to each other, we were catching the same Pokemon. So it's not game breaking with just the coins and the microtransactions. We're still catching from the same pool of Pokemon. The only the big game breaking thing is my ability to hop on a computer and go to Europe and catch stuff there.
Gotcha.
So
yeah.
But microtransactions were not that bad.
Right. It's such a mixed bag. Just to kind of zoom out again and take like an overall view of it, it's just like it feels like in some ways like they nailed it. Like they nailed. I'll say nailed the microtransaction thing because relative to other games, it's way better.
Oh yeah.
So they nailed a thing that so many people get wrong, and then got wrong what the basic stuff that everybody else is fine with. Like it's such a weird
Oh my god.
feel.
Yeah, for real.
Just like, so I don't like, obviously you can't honestly call Pokemon Go a failure. Like
It has been on the top grossing apps for almost a year, and I think it only recently fell off. But think if they were able to keep some of those or more of those people that initially had played, like how much more money they would have earned. Mm-hmm. But yeah, it's crazy.
I'd be really interested to like actually see like what their priorities are on Pokemon Go as a company, like what they're working on the most, because like I don't know, it just seems, and I experienced that frustration with some people on Reddit, just being kind of confused. It's like what are they doing that's keeping them from doing this, like fixing this like game breaking thing, like so.
Well, I know for the most of this year they had been focusing on the gym rework first and raid battles. Mm-hmm. Now I know Gen 3 is about to drop soon, like they said sometime in December. A couple of Gen 3 ghost types were released for Halloween, but Gen 3 is going to be coming up here soon, and but they're also working on what's called EX raid battles. So it's invite only to catch things like Mewtwo and things like that. So I haven't actually gotten one, and it's the Sylph Road, the Reddit site, research subreddit for Pokemon Go. They've done a lot of research into who is getting these EX raid passes, because it's not. You would think it would be like the more diehard players and stuff like that. Like I'm level 37 out of 40. Haven't even sniffed at one. Some players much lower have been getting them. Interesting. Yeah, it's really weird how they're being distributed. But I know they've been working on that, and a lot of players were hoping that after the beta test, because they did test it with some players and stuff like that, that they'd see that it was stupid and would just chuck it out. Because I just want to damn.
See, that's really interesting to me, because you kind of want to know how things are working, but at the same time, the fact that they didn't say this is how this works, it almost makes it a more engaging experience, because like you got to go dig to figure out like what, like who's getting these, how you can get one, like talk to other people in the community. Like I don't know, I feel like that. I won't say lack of transparency, because they're still like kind of telling you what it is, just kind of like not telling you how it's distributed. But that little lack of transparency kind of makes it more engaging.
Yeah,
which is kind of the flip side of the chaos.
They did have an official press release too, like that. They'll have they'll update the community on before events, big events like the Halloween event, Thanksgiving thing. But they did send out an update on this EX raid thing, and saying, hey, we're done with the beta test. We're rolling it out for real. People that play fight raid bosses in at sponsored Starbucks and Sprint store and Go Mobile or whatever, Go Boost Mobile. The sponsored stops and gyms are more likely to get them. Also parks. And it's like, well, I fight in the damn park every single day. But there's also like 4 stops and like several gyms. Like, which one do you want me to fight at? Like, I'm doing this and I want a dang Mewtwo. How do I get it? But I guess their short answer was just keep on fighting, and you'll get one maybe sometime.
There's definitely a lot of lessons that game developers specifically could learn from Pokemon Go about prioritizing and where your resources are going, because obviously anybody can observe Pokemon Go on a much larger scale than like certainly us, like what we're doing, and just like be like, man, what would we do in that situation? Like, how would we handle these game mechanics? So.
Well, and there was a knockoff game that was released a few months ago, or maybe a month ago. I think it got a cease and desist because it was basically just a ripoff. It was called Draconius Go. And it was basically a small studio like yourself, what they would do with Pokemon Go. And
Interesting.
it had almost the same mechanics, but they fixed a lot of the stuff that people had been...
Really?
But at the same time, they didn't have a billion people playing. So
yeah. Man, it sucks that they got a cease and desist, because now I kind of want to play it to see what they did.
You can check. I don't know if it was taken down. Like it was such a blatant ripoff, but I think I think it might still be around because it wasn't enough of a ripoff.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I had no idea about that. That's super fascinating.
Yeah. I mean, what would you do? What would Somber Dawn do with Pokemon Go? Like that's basically what Draconius Go is.
Huh.
And I think they. I don't think that they were taken down. Actually, now that I think about it, I think they were intent on releasing more content, but more little dragons to catch.
Because, I mean, the advertising, writes itself for that. Just Pokemon Go without the crappy stuff.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, it spread through the Pokemon Go subreddits and the community and stuff like that before every moderator on every board was like, this is not a Draconius Go discussion board.
I'm definitely not a fan of ripping off games or whatever, but this, I can't help but have this bring a smile to my face just because someone tried it. Hats off to trying to be a better game developer than Niantic, but I don't know about ripping off the branding. That's probably not the best idea.
Yeah.
But
the people the people that said they played it said it was a pretty great game. But I mean, I never did it. But
that's what we're gonna do. I'm just gonna find bad games and then just completely remake them. Just good.
Didn't they do that? Every studio have a Flappy Bird knockoff.
Oh yeah. It's
you can do a Somber Bird.
Somber Bird. It's just our logo. Tap the logo to make it to go through the tubes or whatever. Oh God. Well, I know what I'm doing tonight. Somber Bird. He's a sad little bird. Well, all right. I think that'll wrap up this podcast. We just unboxed a lot of stuff with Pokemon Go, how they've handled stuff, what's been working, what hasn't, missteps they've made, successes, missteps they never made, with the microtransactions. So I feel like there's a lot to... It's a very interesting game to observe, observe all these things about, because there's just so many things that are just slightly off that you're I wonder. So
you literally just hired a bunch of staff and made $1 billion in a week. Can't you fix this?
Why do we have to fix it? Oh, we made $1 billion. We're done. But all right, so that's gonna wrap up this episode of the Don Dev podcast. If you have an idea for a name for this podcast, put it in the comments, because we're currently trying to rename the podcast before we have too many episodes, before it's too unwieldy to change, and we're trying to pick a good name. So let us know what you think. And thanks to Mike for joining me. And you might have noticed the Grady had to leave, so thank him for joining us for the first part of that. And we will see you guys next time. Bye.